What if I told you that a condemned man's last wish to see his son would expose the real killer and save an innocent life? This isn't fiction. This is the story of Marcus Williams, and how one simple question changed everything. Picture this. It's 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in November. The fluorescent lights in Texas State Penitentiary cast harsh shadows across the concrete walls. The air smells of disinfectant and something else. Fear, maybe, or desperation. Marcus Williams sits in his cell, just 18 hours away from his scheduled execution. He's been on death row for 12 years, convicted of murdering a convenience store clerk named David Chen during what prosecutors called a robbery gone wrong. Marcus has always maintained his innocence, but his appeals have been exhausted. The evidence seemed ironclad. His fingerprints on the register, a witness who placed him at the scene, and his own criminal record that painted him as a career criminal capable of murder. But tonight, as the warden approaches his cell with the standard pre-execution paperwork, Marcus makes an unusual request. "I want to see my son," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. "Tommy. He's 14 now." The warden shifts uncomfortably. "Marcus, you know your son hasn't visited in 3 years. Your ex-wife, she moved on, started a new life." "I know," Marcus replies, his eyes fixed on the ceiling, "but there's something I need to tell him, something important." Now, here's where this story takes an unexpected turn. The warden, a man named Robert Hayes who'd overseen 43 executions in his career, had developed a reputation for being fair but firm. He'd seen men beg, cry, and make impossible demands in their final hours. But something about Marcus's request struck him as different. Maybe it was the calm in his voice, or the fact that he wasn't asking for a stay of execution, just to see his boy. Against protocol, Warden Hayes decided to make the call. If you're finding this story as compelling as I am, hit that like button. It really helps the channel reach more people who love these incredible true stories. 3 hours later, a sleepy 14-year-old Tommy Williams walked into the prison visiting room, flanked by his mother Sarah and her new husband. Tommy hadn't seen his father since he was 11. The boy had grown tall, with his father's dark eyes but his mother's gentle features. The reunion was awkward at first. What do you say to a father you barely remember, who's about to die for a crime that destroyed your family? But Marcus didn't waste time with small talk. He looked directly at his son and asked a question that would shatter everything everyone thought they knew about the David Chen murder. "Tommy," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes, "do you still have that jacket? The red one with the white stripes that you loved so much? The one you were wearing the night I came to pick you up from your mom's house on October 15th, 2011? Tommy looked confused. "Dad, I don't remember. That was so long ago." But Sarah, Tommy's mother, went pale. The date Marcus mentioned, October 15th, 2011, was the night David Chen was murdered. "Marcus," she whispered, "why are you asking about that jacket?" "Because," Marcus said, never taking his eyes off his son, "I need you to remember exactly what happened that night. I need you to remember what time I picked you up and what time I brought you back. Because the prosecutor said I killed David Chen at 9:47 p.m. But I was with you, wasn't I? We went to get ice cream at that 24-hour place on Elm Street, the one with the broken neon sign." The room fell silent except for the humming of the air conditioning and the distant sound of a guard's radio crackling in the hallway. Sarah's new husband, a man named Jim Porter, shifted in his seat. Tommy looked between his parents, confusion written across his young face. I think I remember," Tommy said slowly. "We got mint chocolate chip. You let me get extra sprinkles even though Mom said it would spoil my dinner. What time did I bring you home, son?" "It was late. Mom was mad because it was a school night. She said it was almost 11 o'clock. The implications hit the room like a physical force. If Marcus was with his son until almost 11 p.m., he couldn't have killed David Chen at 9:47 p.m. across town." But this wasn't new information. Marcus had tried to use Tommy as an alibi during his original trial. The problem was, Tommy had been only 2 years old at the time, and Sarah had refused to let him testify, claiming it would traumatize the child. Without Tommy's testimony, and with Sarah remaining silent about that night, Marcus's alibi fell apart. "Sarah," Marcus said, his voice now urgent. Tell them. Tell them what really happened that night. Tell them why you wouldn't let Tommy testify." Sarah's face crumpled. 12 years of buried guilt and fear came pouring out in her next words. "Because Jim was there when you brought Tommy home. Jim saw you drop him off at 10:45. But Jim had just come from... He had blood on his shirt. He said he'd been in an accident, but..." The truth came out in a flood. Jim Porter, Sarah's boyfriend at the time and now her husband, had robbed and killed David Chen. When Marcus showed up to drop Tommy off later that night, Jim panicked. He planted Marcus's fingerprints at the scene. He'd taken a beer bottle from Marcus's house weeks earlier during a barbecue. He coached the witness, his own cousin, to identify Marcus in a lineup. And, most devastatingly, he threatened Sarah and Tommy's safety if she ever told the truth about that night. Sarah had lived with this secret for 12 years, watching the father of her child sit on death row for a crime she knew he didn't commit. She'd remarried Jim Porter, the real killer, out of fear and a twisted sense that she owed him her silence. But facing Marcus now, 18 hours before his execution, with their son between them, she couldn't carry the lie any longer. Within 6 hours, Jim Porter was arrested. Within 12 hours, Marcus Williams was granted a stay of execution. Within 6 months, he was fully exonerated and released. The red jacket Tommy had worn that night was found in Sarah's closet, preserved as a mother's keepsake. It became a crucial piece of evidence, with ice cream stains that could be carbon dated to October 15, 2011, proof that Marcus was exactly where he said he was. But here's what struck me most about this story, and why I had to share it with you. It wasn't just about justice, though justice was certainly served. It was about the power of a father's love and the courage it takes to tell the truth, even when that truth has the power to destroy the life you've built on lies. If you're enjoying these deep dive stories about justice and human nature, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on I've got more incredible true stories coming your way. Marcus Williams today works as an advocate for the wrongly convicted. He remarried, not Sarah, who is serving her own sentence for accessory to murder and perjury, but a woman named Elena, who wrote to him during his final years on death row. Tommy, now 26, has a relationship with his father that's complicated but loving. They meet for ice cream sometimes, though these days they prefer vanilla to mint chocolate chip. The convenience store where David Chen died has been torn down and replaced by a community garden. David's family, initially angry about Marcus's exoneration, eventually found peace in knowing the real killer was behind bars. They even attended Marcus's wedding to Elena, understanding that justice delayed is still justice served. When I interviewed Marcus for this story, I asked him what kept him going during those 12 years on death row, knowing he was innocent but watching appeal after appeal fail. His answer was simple. I knew my son would need his father someday, and I knew that when that day came, I'd have to be able to look him in the eye and tell him the truth. Sometimes the most powerful force in the world isn't evidence or testimony or forensic science. Sometimes it's just a father's love for his child and the unshakable belief that truth, no matter how long it takes, will find its way to the light. That's all for today's story. If it moved you, touched you, or made you think differently about justice and truth, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, every story of wrongful conviction that ends in exoneration started with someone who refused to give up on the truth. In a world that can sometimes feel dark and unjust, that's a light worth holding on to.